The Book of Mediums, Part 2, Chapter 29. This chapter is about reunions, also what we call seances, and Spiritist societies, about the different societies or subjects of study in general, rivalry between societies, and it's already been discussed how the spirit and the medium are in the equation, but also the surroundings and the other people in the setting. Um, in order to have a desirable outcome, they need special conditions. They're not like ordinary societies or collectives. That they need to take the same precautions that are put in place for mediums. Societies, just like a medium, can be frivolous, experimental, or instructive. Frivolous reunions are people who only see the jesting side of the manifestations, are amused with the humor and of trifling spirits. They have full liberty to say what they please, and they are not considered at fault. All kinds of nonsense is asked, such as telling, guessing ages, what they have in their pockets, to detect little secrets and 100 other little things of little importance. Trifling spirits are often very intelligent, and although in an easy and jovial mood, there's a falsity that kind of encroaches upon the setting, and if you're engaging in futile things, you must be calling trifling spirits or mocking spirits. And there's a profanity involved with mixing good information with bad, the sacred with profane, or venerated names or religious sentiments with a bunch of just a show, basically. Experimental reunions have for their object the production of physical manifestation. For a lot of people, this may be more amusing than instructive. Skeptics become more astonished than convinced, and it's to seek out frauds without understanding any of it or aligning themselves with the actual goal of Spiritism. Is more of a scientific method which still needs to be applied, but it's in their motivation or conviction, basically. If they were conducting these methods with better wisdom or better methods or more open-minded, better results could be obtained. Instructive mediums are where true spiritual instruction can happen, and there are conditions such as addressing good spirits, desire to obtain good things, not be trifling and superficial, for useful ends, useful things, not ordinary things, not curiosity or pastime, not just for physical manifestation, but for serious instruction, philosophy, moral teachings. Although proof of the spiritual world is a big thing in Allan Kardec, their objective of Spiritism to be more accepted for the progress of mankind. Reunions for study are important to mediums for intelligent manifestation, for those who want to perfect themselves and do not have a foolish presumption of infallibility or that we can never be wrong or false in our spirit transmissions or translations to the community or to ourselves. We've already said that a danger of mediumship is obsession and fascination. A medium can be deluded, interpreter can be blinded. We cannot remove the medium from all criticism. And they're often a victim of isolation and fascination. And Kardec just kind of is repeating himself about fascinated and obsessed mediums that we went through in a previous chapter. A serious reunion should propose itself, especially to drive away lying spirits. Um, it's an error to suppose its aim and to suppose the quality of the medium. Which is a different aim than Spiritism Cruzado, because we deal with the negative spirits as well as the positive spirits. We don't call to the positive spirits, but say people come that already have a spirit on them, for example. That's just driving away the bad influence isn't going to help that person. Its presentation, anyways, to drive away its presentation. We want to actually bring its presentation forward. That's a difference. A perfect reunion would be in which all members are animated by equal love of good to bring good spirits, whether or not we're as perfected as we would like to be. It's too logical, but it has to be said. Our vibrations are in unison. We're struck by thoughts, by the voice of the oration of the prayers or orations happening. A sympathetic circle. Finding friends will come more willingly and be just more disposed to answer. That we will reflect and react on the spirits in like own ideas. The unanimity, or for all being alike in the seance, it increases a kind of magnetic action which increases or amplifies the signal and each other's energy, while indifference or hostility is kind of against good spirits coming. So if you're just indifferent, blah blah blah, don't want to be there, spirits are more impressionable than human beings, so they can feel energy even more so, or even more sensitive to the influence of the surroundings than we are. So not only are we homogenous or alike in our energy and in our thoughts and in our hearts, but we also need to have serious and useful results. We need to care about the quality of the spirits and the results and the information that we're getting, or then we cannot complain about the quality of the product. There's human error bringing into it concentration and communication of thought, but it's not a straining, it's more like a unison, communication of thought. The greater number of people, then the greater energy you're going to be putting together, but also the greater possibility that everybody is not in unison. So therefore, smaller, more private circles are always more favorable for beautiful communications. Regularity of meetings of the reunions, regular membership. There are spirits who are more habitual to come, even though there are spirits who are everywhere. There are spirit protectors who most often come. There's some spirits that are very punctual, and so they'll come to meetings more and more. Certain spirits bring other spirits. Different flexibility of mediums being present will increase better results. Spirits can come and do come and go willingly, but these are devoted. It's a devoted time and space and place. To put forth like a serious effort, a continued serious effort, and motivation. Spiritist societies are kind of like families, uniting brothers and mankind. has a sense of fraternity, they have a sense of charity with each other. Um, However, there is a diversity of character, of people, of ideas and opinions, which offers up to the meddling spirits a greater easiness for sowing discord. So, to try to get people to fight with each other in a spiritist society, like evil spirits love to do that, to use certain people to create problems who aren't aware of their own either psychology or spiritual influence on them. So, again, smaller groups lend possibly less to this, but they're still subject to the same influences. It doesn't matter how many groups are doing the work, it just matters more that people are doing it, basically, and that they're doing it effectively than the actual amount. So it doesn't really matter if 1,000 groups are doing the work or if you only have 25. It's about the quality of work. Um, Another reason that Kardec is not as dogmatic to spread, like they want the truth spread, but that certain things have to be put in place for it to be effective than just having like sheer numbers for say political or monetary reasons or other organizations, about like the whole purpose of spiritism in these societies. Spiritism as a doctrine has enemies interested in opposing it from other dogmatic institutions who seek to control people, very religious dogmatic people who want to believe that everybody else is wrong except for them, atheists, other scientists, because a lot of scientists were in spiritism and saw it as a spirit science. And it's more of a soft science of people's lived experiences on top of our witnessed what happens in these seances, and uniformity between mediums and observed seances. But there's people in scientific circles who want to attack this emerging spirit science. Malevolent beings creep in wherever they hope to do harm. They may not attack spiritism openly, but they act in the dark, who caress with one hand and may mangle with the other. They seek to endeavor to destroy by throwing in brands of discord. There are those in reunions or seances, people in these spiritist societies, groups, or spiritual houses who like to sow trouble and dissension. They may be actual agents of those who are interested in disorder. They sow distrust, disaffection or unhappiness with other people in the group, hypocritical interest, uh, incorrect like criticisms with the aim of breaking up harmony of the group is what they actually desire. Um, to appeal to sentiments of charity and fraternity with such people is like talking to people who are deaf, because their aim is to destroy those sentiments, which is obstacles to their plot. These spiritists want to lead the group to a rupture, and their attention is not on the aims of spiritism or the group being successful. And there's people's own private interests as well, for whatever attention, power, control, whatever reason. Um, it's their own character, they're vain, skeptical, um, people who always want the last word, who are only happy with in contradicting others, are just time wasters. Even if they don't profit by themselves and destroying spiritist societies and relationships. In the view of avoiding group dynamics and drama, trouble, and distraction, the society should organize itself and pay attention to special measures to deprive the fomenters of discord of the means of doing injury and give the greatest ease for their removal. Small reunions only need a simple disciplinary rule or and then also bad spirits, as they attach themselves to individuals, can also attach themselves to groups, but they will attack the weakest, the most accessible, those who are most like these lower spirits, to use them as instruments. Exploit your own weaknesses, and look to dominate and subjugate as many mediums as possible. So, whenever one person of a group has fallen into a trap, an enemy is in the camp, then we must be on our guard, for it is probable that he will multiply his attempts among several people in the group. If he is not discouraged by an energetic resistance, then the obsession becomes like a contagious disease, which manifests among the group by a disruption of mediumship, hostility, moral perversion, and breaking up the harmony. The most powerful antidote to this poison is charity. We don't wait for evil to become incurable to bring the remedy for it. Prayer from the heart. The study of the signs which will reveal the presence of deceiving spirits. For prayer, the first will attract good spirits who will assist us and second us by our confidence in God. And then looking for the deceiving signs will help to alleviate those who may not be as clear-sighted or sensible enough, if they're only like half deceived. If they're not able to open their eyes, then the evil will increase. And you need to look at the conditions which are most favorable for a society to reconciliate with the sympathy of good spirits for good communications. On the following points: perfect community of views and sentiments, reciprocal kind feelings among all the members, abnegation of every sentiment adverse to true Christian charity, which is love of your brother or mankind, sole desire for instruction and to advance yourself and humanity through the teachings of good spirits, and to profit by their good advice, to act on their good advice, is not just for our own pleasure, but those to extract the fruit of their teaching, and the prize of the seances will only be for those the greater or less interest to your own individualism. Exclusion of everything that is just curiosity for its end, concentration and respectful silence during interviews with the spirits, like following the rules of the society, um, association of all the assistants by thought, the appeal made to the spirits invoked, the mediums in the assembly, um, in control or working on pride, self-love, and supremacy, and the desire, just be in the desire to be useful as an instrument or a tool. Uh, these conditions are not so difficult that it cannot be done. And then, in fact, because it's so easy to do these things, Spiritism will just keep increasing and silence criticism. The purer their intentions, the more respect they will get, even among their adversary. Because when ridicule attacks good or the truth, it is no longer amusing. It becomes despicable eventually when the truth is just undeniable. Reunions will bond with sympathy and mutual solidarity, and it will contribute to the general progress. He's just repeating himself about feeling, about diverging from any of this, feeling hostile or any sentiment, adverse to like love and helping spirit, paralyze the efforts of the good spirits, basically. And that will just mess up the mediumship of the group. Um, and there's things like we do, like there's no coming and going out of a circle as much as possible, except for bathroom breaks, but not in and out. We cleanse people at the beginning, so we can't be stopping right in the middle and cleanse somebody necessarily because there's a spiritual flow in the room. Um, there's things that are respectful to the mediums and other people in the space. So, unfortunately, respect is problematic to some people, and they're all self-focused, and that's going to hinder your own progress and in any setting that that person is attending. Superior spirits are useful for instruction, but so are ordinary spirits. Um, the difference is in the fluctuation or accuracy or in some of the quality of in the information. With elevated spirits, the range of knowledge is larger. The amount of instruction is more vast. Several mediums can work at the same exact time. In addition to invocations or prayer, spontaneous dictations or mediumship is also a large area of study, which also must be examined with care. So there's an inexhaustible amount of variables, but they're all should be serious and instructive. To regulate, one, reading of communications in the last seance should be correctly drawn up. So there's like a secretary or there's somebody who is writing stuff down for Misa. We do that, not necessarily everything. Like if you have a regular working temple, yes. But if you're just going to a Misa for yourself, then someone will probably have a book to write everything down for you who's there, especially if you don't speak the language in our tradition. Someone who could write it down in English for you. Two, varieties, correspondence, reading of communications obtained outside the seances, relation of interesting facts of spiritism. So just you studying spirit science, you studying history, you studying cultures, use of spirits, um, spontaneous spiritism, things that happen outside the reunions, and going back and re-looking at what the communications that you've had from the seances is basically studying your own spiritism. Works of study of moral questions and problems, looking at the types of questions, proposing questions, prayers, what prayers you use, the use of prayers. So this is studying the work itself in terms of the words you use, the prayers, all these things. Conference, critical and analytical examinations of various communications, discussions on the various points of spirit science. So this is now like Spiritist societies and Spiritists coming together to have a conference, to maybe produce like a newsletter or doing interviews with each other. It's more discussions among ourselves as sharing the information, sharing what we studied. Circles often stopped in the very beginning because they did not have enough mediums. Mediums are one of the essential elements of spirit reunions, but they're not an indispensable element. Just because you don't have a medium doesn't mean that there is nothing to do. Or just because you're not a medium yourself doesn't mean that there's nothing to do for you to learn about spiritism and to study basically in your own education of Spiritism is not just being at the Boveda or being going to a misa. It's also learning about Spiritism and philosophy, rereading things, learning from others. There's been a lack of conferences and people coming together to collaborate. It's more just little groups, little satellites or little stars everywhere of groups of a spiritismo or spiritists. And a few cities have a few spiritualist churches, which are quite different. But in doing conferences or more collaboration with in between the groups, it will be like spring rays of light, which you may not have perceived in an individual reading or in your individual group. Inspiration, which spreads, um, raising grave moral problems, which alone Spiritism can solve, increasing facts that can illuminate your own information to compare to your own information, events, things that happened. This will increase our own knowledge. And so this is more than just a pastime. It's like a greater organization of these spirit societies. Rivalry. Um, Without like discourse or like comparing, contrasting, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily disagreeing with another spiritist or with a philosophy. It's kind of like devil's advocate, or by doing these things, it will raise other questions and increase more the vault of information that's produced. Um, that's the point of debate. That's debating a point. And this shouldn't be viewed as rivalry for your own glory, for your oh look how intelligent I am, as the end basically, because now you're going to get into antagonistic to the spirits. Um, what is the truth should be the aim, pride, furnishing arms to detractors of spiritism and cause more injury than helping, which we're trying to actually defend spiritism. We're not all going to think the same on everything necessarily. We're interpreting. We should not be jealous of each other. We should not have prejudice with each other. Jealousy only comes from egotism or self love. Should come a desire to propagate the truth, which end is moral. If there, we should be pleased to see more and more spiritists, and if there's rivalry, then we can't be excited for more good being done. They must show love and charity if they're gonna really be superior or really preach that they're morally superior. Then we should look at what their actions are. And you're not always gonna know other people's hearts and minds and the things they did. Um, but again, just like we judge spirits by the moral yardstick, so are the mediums. Um, and they go into false prophets in the spirits book again. If spirits forbid discussion on their teachings, it's because they're aware that there's certain weaknesses in some of the information that they're able to provide. Um, we should have good sense. We shouldn't allow doubt and uncertainty to spread among believers just because some things aren't necessarily provable, um, or we have a lack of understanding in some areas. Be humble, be patient, be benevolent with a kind indulgence. Um, for what use is it for the miser to be a spiritist if he continues to be a miser? For the proud, if he's always full of himself? For the envious, if he's always jealous? Partake with those of the same sentiments, then there will be union, sympathy, fraternity, and not a vain and puerile antagonism of self love of all things, a firm foundation and good for all. Then all would be respected, and the spirits would not impose on us silence from a foolish ridicule. Such is the path that we are bound to conduct Spiritism. The flag we bear aloft is that of a Christian and humanitarian Spiritism. So, in Christian is love for your fellow man, basically, which I think is agape, the Greek term. I'm not sure though. It's a great work. From one end to the other, may Spiritists reach out to each other, a brotherly hand, so we may form a chain to close out evil in an extricable network.